Okay, and we're live. Greetings and welcome to my channel. We are going to today to be going to be talking about love spells, glamour magic, and the secret to romance. So this should be a fun live. One of the first things that I want to talk about with that is that we are not going to be talking about targeted love spells. Well, we'll talk a bit about them as to why not to do targeted love spells, but we're not going to be discussing how because this is bad idea on many levels. Hey Kira, good to see you. We are going to be having, as far as the alcohol, I have a Port Guchan Oat Porter. It's a little bitter. I don't know. Certainly not great. Sorcerer Towel. Yes, I've made jokes about that myself. A lot of my friends back in the day used to call me Towley and make jokes about like, and then one day he just got high and wandered off. Speaking of which, I seem to have left. Oh, hopefully, I didn't leave my smoking utensils out because that'll require an early intermission. Anyways, yeah, a lot of my friends used to joke around about Towel and Towley. Just one day just got high and wandered off. So I used to wander off a lot, go on a lot of walkabouts. Anyways, like I said, we're going to be. Hey, Johnston, good to see you. We're going to talk about glamours, magic, and love spells tonight, and the secret to romance. And I don't just mean by that romantic love. The secret sacred bathrobe of towel. Indeed. Indeed. I hadn't thought about that much, but I suppose I am I do wear a bathrobe and I sound like towel. Might have to especially the multicolored ones that I'm wearing for Wednesdays. It's a sacred bathrobe at this point. Slowly. Duke Zapar. I don't know who that is. So, anyways, Barnside Brewing Company Oat Porter. It's okay, a little bitter. So, like I said, we're gonna get this bit about love spells out of the way right at the beginning. We are not going to be talking about targeted love spells because I am not willing to provide that information. We might talk a bit about how to avoid them and how to get rid of them if they have been attached to you. I myself have been the victim of a love spell, and it is not a pleasant place to be, and it's not good for anyone involved. So, the reason for that. Oh, okay. I probably have read about them in the past then. But I don't always remember all of the Goetia. But during the Goetia, I probably have read about them at some point, but still not sparking much of a memory at this moment. Okay, so as I was saying, love spells, targeted love spells. There is more than just moral reasons as to why not to cast a targeted love spell. I mean, there's the obvious ones. Is it really love? You're going to always be wondering how they truly feel about you. You may have to keep going with the spell. What if they ever find out that they're under a spell? And then they're going to question, do I really love this person? Or is it just a spell? And even if you've only cast a spell at the beginning and get them to love you, there's always going to be that question mark. And those are just the obvious things. Now, beneath that, of course, there's the consent. That's definitely it's messing with someone's consent. That is an issue as well. So there's that. But also, ultimately, this is the ultimate reason why you don't want to do targeted love spells. They are a curse. You are casting a curse on another person. You are casting something on them to directly subvert their free will. And that alone, yeah, moral implications, bad, don't do that unless you're in an emergency situation. Like if someone's trying to attack, their free will is to harm you. Yeah, fine, subvert the free will, prevent them from harming you. But when you do this sort of thing with a love spell, you're not just casting it on the person that you have targeted, you're also casting this curse on yourself. Well, yes, exactly. We're going to be talking about that. Those are the type of love spells we are going to be talking about, is ones that make you more attractive and more likely to find someone as that is that you're going to connect well with. In fact, I casted something like that to get with Felix, and it has worked out quite well. They are fully aware that I casted that spell. We've even done some consensual stuff on each other since then to strengthen our bond. And we're going to talk all about that. But when you purposely target someone, yes, that's exactly it, Johnston. This type of spell, you're casting it on yourself directly, though, because you're the other part of it. You're binding two people together that may not necessarily be intended to be together, in which causes a kink or bend in the flow of that person's fate and anyone that is attached to their fate, which you have just done to yourself. So, if you cast a love spell on another person, you are bending your will as much as you are theirs, and you are creating a error, a glitch in the pattern of how your fate unfolds. So essentially, one could say, if we wanted to get down to what karma really is, which is acting within one's own nature and following one's fate, casting a directed love spell is in direct contradiction to that. This is something that is going to mess with your own free will and your own fate by how you've bound yourself to this other person. So, not only is it immoral and unethical and just aesthetically unsound with what romance is to cast a love spell directly on targeted on another person, you're also literally cursing yourself, breaking your own karma and affecting your fate in a negative way. So, not a good idea. Alternatives to this. Alternatives to a directed love spell. The first one is like Jason Davis mentioned here a moment ago. Um, we can use glamour magic to make ourselves more attractive, and also love spells to find the right person. I have even used spells like that to find someone that wasn't the right person, but the right person at that time. Like, there's not even anything wrong with casting spells to meet someone for a hookup, right? Because there are other people out there want to hook up. It's not wrong. It's not even bad. And like I say, I've done this many times, and you can literally write that into the spell work of what you were casting, even what it is that you're hoping to happen. Put that into a sigil, use the letters, charge it with well, I like to use rose water a lot, or dove's blood. And if you're looking for deep romance, then you could use, what do I mean by rose water? I don't mean like the rose water you buy at the store. You can use that. I'm talking about taking rose petals and steeping them in warm water to get a rose water kind of tea, right? That's one of the things that I will often use, because roses are very powerful in many ways. There's a lot of aesthetic value and power in and magic in roses, in all parts of the rose bush. But the petals, if you're wanting deep, passionate love, you want to go with some dark red rose petals. But if you're looking just to meet someone of the your preferred gender, and you just want a good time, a little bit of a fling, then you're going to want to go with pink rose petals, right? Because of the connections and vibra and just general acceptance of to what the different petals mean. So, if you're wanting to cast a love spell for someone to meet someone that is exactly what you want, like I said, you if it's just something simple, you can do basic sigil work. But I feel like that is great for to go find someone to be with for a while. Find someone, your pink rose petal spells. Something where you want to meet somebody, have a nice fling, maybe even something that'll last for a while, but not necessarily permanent. You get your pink rose petals. You can use sigil work to pretty much just write out what it is that you want, make that a statement of intent, make it into a sigil, charge it with pink rose water, and then carry it in your pocket till you find the person that you want to get with. Hmm. Self love spells. This is a very interesting idea. I wasn't really planning on talking about that tonight, but we certainly can. By self love spells, I assume you mean things to rebuild self esteem, because that is an important aspect to being able to love properly and have a good relationship is, well, they say loving yourself, but I feel like, well, what's the word I'm looking for here? Self-esteem isn't it. It's self-understanding, self-acceptance, right? My particular flavor of neurodivergence, um this like I said, we can talk about that, but it's not something I have a whole lot of personal experience with, because with my particular flavor of neurodivergence, I got to stay humble. I have to do the opposite, right? Because I'd have delusions of grandeur if I let them. If I let the grandeur delude, I would have delusions of grandeur. I just have a naturally preset high self esteem. You know, I have to keep it in check, and actually to make sure my ego doesn't overcome my power level, right? I've talked about that before. I mean, that's a totally different thing, but the ego inflation power sap and the level of confidence that my brain wants to give me on some of the times is not necessarily equal to what I am. I don't know. So with that, my confidence is not always equal to my skill level because of the neurodivergence. My brain tells me, "Oh, you can do anything," and then sometimes it'll just dump all the information out, though. So there are other problems of having this brain. Anyways, um, that's way off subject. Let's see. So, um, we'll come back to the self love spells. I'm gonna have to think about that one for a bit. So, as I was saying, next let's go over the spell that I cast to meet Felix. I've done other ones in the past, and we will talk about some of those. And I've even made my own mistakes, right? When you're young, you do stupid things sometimes. So, you know, I have other reasons to, I mean, I have reasons to know that targeted love spells aren't a good thing, besides having been the victim of one. But yeah, we will talk about that. I'm not gonna hold anything back. Tell you the truth of what I've done and what I've experienced from it. Okay, so as I was saying, we will next go over the spell that caused me to meet Felix, whom I'm now married to and am very happily in love up here in Canada. They they're probably not listening too much right now because we got a new Airbnb guest that they are seeing too. So it's perfect time to talk about it. What happens to the spell when you realize you've been put under one? Just being aware the spell is there really helps with resisting it. Sometimes you're trapped so much that even knowing that isn't enough if you don't fully accept it. You can get so into the idea that, yeah, it can get real weird. It can get real weird, but most of the time, if you truly not just know, but actually accept that you've had a love spell cast on you, that's typically enough to break it. Not always, and we'll get to that. But the spell that got Felix and I together started with I had a love romance um crystal guard. If you go back in my videos, I had several crystal gardens in my old altar space. I had one for money, which that's this green one here that's taking a lot longer to evaporate here. So it's mostly just the big thing of green water right now with all kinds of residual money spell magic in it. But the the rose romance one was that. It was red dye and the rose water put in sugar and allowed to grow up inside of a chalice inside of a chalice inside of a silver bowl. And I started a crystal garden in that with red dye and rose water and several aces of hearts, and allowed the crystals to grow pink and red up out of the chalice. And I used that salt for mostly for glamour magic. When I just wanted to meet someone to have some fun or whatever, I would use a little bit of that salt. But eventually, I decided I wanted more than that. I wanted an actual partner. And so when I did this, now I'm just realizing a little side caveat here that says something about maybe there's more to fate in love than I realized. Because part of the reason I started doing pink flower love spells is when I tried to do anything real serious. Now, this is from someone who, at the time, I've never been homophobic, but I did used to consider myself heterosexual before I met Felix. Well, I considered myself to prefer women, and Felix is trans. They're a they. They're somewhere in between. Anyways, most of the times, if I casted a meet someone for a bit kind of spell, I would meet some girl, we'd date for like 2 months or whatever, have a bit of a fling, and then it would just kind of go away. And for the most part, that was fine with me. I've never really wanted much more than that, I didn't think. But like I said, whenever I tried anything stronger about trying to actually get love, I would wind up with a lot of guys hitting on me. And for the most part, I'm not interested in men. So that's just an interesting caveat that when I finally did this spell where I took all the things seriously and wanted to meet someone, I didn't meet a girl or a woman. I met a Felix. So it's like maybe the fate wasn't there, but it was trying to pull me more towards that, like the potential for of my fate to be with the person that I have perhaps fated to be with wasn't really there yet, but it was then trying to prepare me for the idea by getting me more pulling me more away from the heteronormative idea that was stuck in my head. Like, oh, hey, Black Unit Griffin. That's weird you didn't get a notification, but I'm glad you're here. I tried to do it about the same time every Saturday. We're drinking a oat porter. It's okay. It's a little better once you've drinking a bit of it. A bit bitter at first. Anyways, so yeah, I do want to acknowledge that there's some indication that perhaps there's something to this fated partner concept with that every time I casted a love spell before I met Felix, where I was supposed to find love, it was drawing me away from the heteronormative ideas that I thought were what I wanted. Now, the reason I hesitated with talking about the heterosexual and all that is honestly, I'm a chimera. I had a twin that I absorbed, and I believe my twin was my sister. So my own gender stuff is a bit odd, like double binary is what I tend to call myself, or intersex perhaps, but like in my nervous system. Anyways, that is neither here nor there. It's just an interesting little side note to that idea of the fated partner. Okay, so the glove spell that I cast that caused me to meet Felix was a pouch, which in my way of doing things, I don't know where I originally got the ceremony, but in my way of doing things, a pouch is a big part of the marriage ceremony, right? When I have performed marriages, if the people don't have a specific way they want to do it, I have a ceremony that I suggest that starts with braiding a lock of your hair with a lock of their hair into a circle and then putting it in a pouch, which you keep on your altar. I would have been a twin had my twin survived. At some point during the um pregnancy process, whatever the heck that's called, the prenatal process or whatever, um, my died and I absorbed them. When I was born, their placenta was attached. Oh, I still have my shirt on underneath my robe. Hold on. Ah, good excuse to take it off, and I usually like to have just the robe on. Anyways, their placenta was attached to my nipple right here. See that big scar right there? That bled and was all kinds of vivid colors till I was 9 years old. And I believe that was my sister's placenta. So fraternal. They call people like me chimeras. And anyways, if I'm right about her being my sister, she did die or become absorbed early on enough in the process that I don't really have any external female characteristics, but there's some internal things that would be a bit TMI, but they are there. Anyways, so I took and I made a pouch because to me this is a marriage significant love or love significant thing because a pouch is part of the wedding ceremony that Now, I'm not to be clear, I'm not saying this is something passed down to me by my ancestors. This isn't as far as I know, this isn't the Ojibwe marriage ceremony. I don't know what that is. Nor do I know what, like, the Magyar one was, right? Yeah, um, I seem to have a feminine nervous system in some ways. That's about all the more I'm TMI means too much information. Um, I mean, without getting too graphic, I seem to have nerve endings or parts of my body that feel more than what they should. Like I have extra erogenous zones. I guess I'm comfortable with saying that. See, I'm drinking tonight. Ooh, that produce more pleasure than what a male is supposed to experience from those areas. Anyways, right. 26 minutes in and I'm talking about my personal love life, right? I mean, this is the love spell one. I said I wasn't going to hold back tonight. So, I took the pouch and I put red rose petals inside of the pouch and then I took some parchment paper. Oh, I have an insanely high threshold for pain. But hey, Romstead, it's good to see you. Um, Part of the reason my pain threshold though is as high as it is because well, I'm American and my wisdom teeth came in and I had no dental insurance. So I literally had to just let my wisdom teeth come in. I've got them. They're in my mouth and the teeth around them are no longer there. These ones here are straight sideways. It was an insane. Or no, sorry, just this side. The only one I ever got took out was this the one on this side. I got the taken out in Job Corps, and the dentist told me to stick around for another 6 months in Job Corps to get the other ones out. I and he told me I'd regret it if I didn't. And I was 19 and didn't listen to him. So 3 times I've had to survive through a wisdom tooth coming in. If it wasn't for clove oil, I may have gone insane. Yeah, yeah, all of mine were compacted. This one's 5 wisdom teeth. Oh my gosh. Ugh. But yeah, I had to survive through the whole process, though. I have no dental coverage. I did eventually get one of the other teeth pulled, and I cost a lot of money. I almost wish I hadn't done it because I survived through everything else. I probably could have survived through that too. Sometimes there's extras. Sometimes people have even a third set of teeth. Oof. That still couldn't have been any fun to have 5 of them pulled out all at once like that. Even the one I had extracted at what would I have been? 20? Wasn't pleasant, but actually having them grow all the way in and breaking all the other teeth around them in the process of coming in, it becomes pain gnosis after a while. And I feel like maybe that's why they call them wisdom teeth, is because you gain an insight from that amount of physical pain. It's just that just stays for days and days. And we're way off subject, but this one here actually kept I was living in the woods at the time and it kept swelling up. I had this curved needle I had to heat up hot so that it wouldn't cause an infection and stab that thing and drain it every day for like a month while I'm living in the woods, eating nothing but prickly pear cactus and fish and different stuff. Oh, that was a crazy, crazy experience. Yeah, mine didn't. My wisdom teeth didn't actually come in until my early 30s. I was in my early 30s when all this started happening, and then for a couple of years there, my mouth was just a locus of pain. But we're over that. 1.5 months. Oof. I don't remember how long, but for a while there, I couldn't eat solid food. When the dentist took this one out, he begged me to stay for another 6 months because he would have just took them all out for free because I was in Job Corps. Man, I wish I had listened to him. That's horrific. Absolutely horrific. Definitely, as far as pain levels, one of the worst things that's ever happened to me. Before that, the worst pain I ever had was a hobo spider bite that bit my finger and swelled up to the size of a golf ball. That was pretty lame. But yes, Johnson, you were asking about whether women tend to have a higher pain tolerance. They do because they need to be able to survive through childbirth. It is a biological component to their nervous system. And yeah, the pain thing, I don't know. I don't know if I was had the same pain tolerance before the wisdom teeth that I do now. Indeed, love. Max. I don't know. I almost called you love. Dealing with heartbreak. Oh, we can definitely talk about that tonight. There are some things you can do at the end of a relationship to lessen that pain, for sure. That emotional pain. Because now we're talking about emotional pain, obviously. Though I do have a scar from a girl that I broke up with back in the day. So sometimes the pain can be physical. Ripped a hole in my lip with the engagement ring she gave me. I might tell that story. Yeah. Okay. So I still haven't gotten to describing Felix's the love spell that got me with Felix, but I am going to have the first intermission real quick because I forgot to bring a smoking utensil. I will be right back. Okay, I'm back. Yes, Johnson, you were asking about can a spirit fall in love with you? Absolutely. There are many traditions of people marrying gods, even. If you look up Loki wife anywhere, Reddit, YouTube, Facebook, there are entire communities of people, men and women, that are married to Loki. And it's a serious thing. This isn't just some fantasy. A lot of these people are very much in a romantic sexual relationship with Loki. And there are some people, like apparently Max, that they seem to have a real interest in. They can very much find certain people appealing. I've had relationships on and off with beings of this type of myself. I've never Snape wives. Wow, all right. People marrying the servitor or Tulpa, whatever you want to call it, created by Snape. That's interesting. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, whatever people enjoy. So, anyways, the love spell that got me with Felix. We've been on the verge of talking about that one for a while now. Like I said, I had the love guard. I had that rose love garden growing up underneath, and then I got a pouch that I filled with rose petals. And I don't know where, but the concept of a single bird has always expressed marriage to me. And I put that in the pouch as well that I was going to hang above there. Now, last step I took and I wrote out exactly what I wanted in a partner, how I wanted them to treat me, how I wanted them to behave. I didn't put anything in about physical characteristics because, I mean, don't get me wrong, I like pretty. Felix is a very good looking person, you know. But that's not a primary concern with me as much as I like good looking. It's true. Everybody does. Everybody likes what they consider good looking. Some of the people I think are gorgeous, other people don't seem to see it. But that's okay. Um, but yeah, I wrote down everything that I wanted in a partner on a list, and then I made a sigil that was kind of just like not from the words, but just a little doodle sigil that I felt encompassed the person, and it wound up being like a stick figure kind of drawing. But what's interesting about that is usually when I draw a girl stick figure, I'll put like kind of some boobs. I didn't bother with this one. I didn't draw those. And again, that makes me wonder about that idea of faded love. And that was pretty much the spell. And then I met Felix, and other than two things on the list that I knew I was asking, even as I wrote them, I was like, it'd be nice, but I know I'm essentially asking too much. Everything else on the list was Felix to a T. So, I mean, that was, I suppose, the most successful love spell I've ever cast. Now, I've done lots of spells with the lover's hearts and things that, like I said, were to attract someone to me temporarily. And all those have been successful. But they were all small things. We'll talk about glamour magic here in a minute because some of those are related to glamour magic. But I want to talk about this heart healing rituals. There's a lot of different versions of that, of these heart healing rituals. But like Max just said, they don't, heartbreak is not something that can be completely healed by spellcraft. It's just not how spellcraft works, right? If you genuinely feel that ache, it is part of your will. You can't just will it away when it's your will that feels the pain. But you can do things to heal that hurt. And a lot of times, this will take on, at least for me, the idea of literally visualizing my heart coming back together, literally visualizing, your classic heart shape with a crack in the middle, and then doing a spell work that is usually involving, well, again, roses, because that's a big thing to me, and the rose water, but a bath and washing away and a cleansing. However you want to do that. Like, I like to take saltwater baths and stuff like that, and then incense, and then a symbolism. Like, you could even literally take a mechanical pencil, draw a heart with a crack down the middle, take your bath, and then erase the crack. Careful with Jin. That is not a good place to say if you're going to start dating spirits. Start with something easy like a succubus. The Jin. Hmm. The singing is a beautiful thing, Max. That is exactly. That's better advice than I was able to give. Thank you for bringing that up. That's better advice than I was able to give in that moment. Because being how I am, our heartbreak and heartache, I can feel it extremely intensely. But being how I am, I don't stay wounded for long. I heal quickly, you know. Um One of the things that I have used for heartache myself, speaking of singing and music, is there's an old classic rock song who you think I'd remember the band, but it's like a rubber ball, I'll come bouncing back to you. But it's the idea of I just remind myself that my heart's like a rubber ball. It bounces, and I just cohesion of the self helps a lot with this understanding of the self and just accepting that there is never any other person that makes us whole, even if there are fated lovers. Who the heck sings that rubber ball song? I'm just gonna ask the Google that real quick. Bobby V. I use a lot of random 50s and 60s songs in my work. Like my favorite thing to do with the Return to Sender spell is to sing Elvis Presley at it. Return to sender, address unknown. You know, to be clear, I'm not in any way trying to disrespect the Jin, by the way. But what I'm saying is, this is not some casual thing to go try and hit up a Jin, right? This is a. I try not to say anything about, oh, Jin are this or Jin are that, because that's like saying humans are this or humans are that. And there's so many different types of humans that have so many different personalities. But the Jin tend to be a lot more passionate and expecting of, oh, what is the word? Sincerity than the human relationships are, right? This isn't some just, oh, I'm going to go get a Jin baddie because that sounds like fun. That's a serious relationship. That's a very real thing. You want to just get with some baddie that wants to taste your sexual energy, go for a succubus first. Something like that. Something that is up for this casual, I want to consume your pleasure and help you create pleasure so I can create your pleasure so I can consume it kind of thing, right? That's a succubus. The Jinn, you're talking about a full fledged relationship. You're talking about the whole thing. Commitment. Yes. There you go. It's a real thing. This isn't they are complete and full beings. So, I mean, I've never been with a Jin in the way that Max is talking about, but I'm sure Max is going to agree with me on that. Like you said, we're a Jin husband, right? Yeah. Well, I think that's part of the reason that the spirits like you in general for that kind of thing, Max. You know, for a non physical being, the physical part of it doesn't mean much. They want that sincerity, they want that honest, deep connection because that's penetration for them if you want to look at it that way. That's getting in there. That's actually, that's the dirty stuff if you want to look at it that way. If that's a metaphor, it's not dirty either, is it? But that's the good part for them. Got a rose cider here. I'm going to try in just a moment. Almost impatient for it. Like fear of getting another dog because of the pain you felt when the last one died. Ooh. Oh, Johnston. Oh, you just hurt my heart. Oh, you just hurt my heart. Oh, I miss my dog. I miss my dog. Anyways, no, I mean, but the thing about the Jin is commitment doesn't mean that's the only person you can have a relationship with, right? The Jin by nature are essentially polyamorous. Most spirits are. Okay, so that spell with that got me Felix. Um, what else more do I want to say about that? Felix is fully aware of that spell, and it was never targeted at any one person. It was cast with a net whose filter would remove anyone from that didn't fit what I was looking for, and then draw someone to me that did fit that bill. Okay, so that was the Oak Porter, Barnside Brewing Company, Farm Fresh Beer. Man, 5.6 is the alcohol content. I'll give it like since that made me think of stars, we'll talk about stars. I would say 6 out of 10 stars. Worth drinking. Not great. Probably won't buy again. Lone Tree Rose Dry Cider. This sounds awesome. I'm hoping it's actually dry and tastes like rose hips. If so, this will be a very good. If you are too specific, it's harder for the spell to work. Yes. The more parameters you're putting in, the finer the filter is going to be, right? I feel like a good way to consider this type of love spell is to think of it like a net, right? You're casting out a net to draw this type of person to you. And anyone that doesn't fit the bill of what it is you specified is going to slip through the net. And only those that are like what you want are going to be drawn closer, right? Hmm. This is pretty good. Not quite as dry as I had hoped, but it does taste like rose. It does taste like rose hips. Not bad. Yes. Yeah, you certainly, and you can refine this down. Some people have used this concept to refine something down to the point they're basically describing an individual that they want. And it's an odd loophole. I'm not sure what how it's a gray area, right? Because it's not really targeted. But if you describe everything about a particular person, I don't know. If it's possible to be with that person, then it might draw them in. But that's the thing about a net spell is if they're not in your line of fate, yeah, if we're gonna call it a net spell for the metaphor, if they're not in your line of fate, they will still slip out. So yeah, I guess that's okay, but it's more like casting like that would create the most opportunity possible for you to get with the person you had described, you know, but I don't know. I feel like that's a gray area. I'm not sure why I bring that up exactly, except for that I've seen people do this on several occasions. Like, okay, well, I'm not going to do anything to affect their free will, but I'm going to describe them exactly and cast a spell to draw someone exactly like that to me. I've never actually seen it work. Come up, speaking of which, I've never actually seen that work where they wind up with the person they were actually aiming for. I've seen that work where they get with somebody that's almost exactly like the person they were aiming for. That's the closest I've ever seen to that working. Yes, this is a good wish, Max. So, if you wanted to cast a specified rather than targeted love spell, that'd probably be a perfect place to begin, Max. Like like I said with Felix, I wrote down everything that I wanted. And some of them were very hyper specific and even maybe a little selfish in some ways. Like I said, there's only two that I mean, because like I'm polyamorous. I didn't understand that about myself until a little while ago. Felix understands that all a lot better than I do. I knew that that's what I wanted, and I put that in the list, right? And that particular part worked out even better than I understood. Because I mean, I guess let me correct myself. Felix and I are relationship anarchists. So there was a little difference. I wanted them to be polyamorous, and then the part that I knew was just me being greedy was have had several girlfriends, but I couldn't help sticking it on there. It would have been nice. But the other one that I didn't get was they're not rich. No, that would have been nice, but at both of those, I knew I was being greedy, right? So that's kind of the reason I bring that up is that I said about things being specific, letting other people out of the net, letting people out of the net. It's not as black and white as that. There's some gray area, especially when you're acknowledging as you're writing the thing that, yeah, I know this one isn't necessarily going to be as likely as the others, right? I think of that as like a little extra finger out there, kind of trying to grab an extra bit and pull it in. No, I use intent, form, charge, containment. Like I said, I put this all in a pouch because in my own head canon, whatever you want to call it, culture that I think I have carried from past lives. And I used to think that it had something directly to do with the horde and it was a ceremony I got from them. I don't know. But when to me, a marriage ceremony, and Felix and I have done this, we've actually been married 3 times. One, the first time, we braided our hair together. And how that ceremony works and why I use the pouch is because in that ceremony, and I had them grow their hair for a year and a day beforehand. Just well, at least they actually only they grew a lock of their hair for a year and a day because they keep their hair fairly short. They grew it for a year and a day for it to get long enough, and I grew my hair back out. Still am, but we took their hair and my hair and braided them into a circle. We braided them together and then tied those into a circle during our wedding ceremony. And I'll get back to why this is important in just a moment. So we braided that into a circle, and then we take a small fire and transfer that flame to a larger fire that then sparks up into something bigger, making something that was just a small thing into something larger. One person joining with another by the combining of their hair. So you do the hair, and then you do the fire, and then you do the bit that it blew me away when I read Stranger in a Strange Land and they did the water brother thing because it's just like that, right? I pour a glass of water and I say, "This water represents our love," and I hand it to them. They say, "I drink of your love." And then they take the cup and say the same words, "This water represents our love," and I say, "I drink of your love," and I finish the glass, which is very similar to the water brother ritual in Stranger in a Strange Land, which, to be clear, I at least had not in this life read before I conceived, remembered, whatever it is of this ceremony. So that's pretty much the whole ceremony right there. Then you put the hair in a pouch and you keep it on your altar. So the pouch, to me, was a thing very much about love and commitment, marriage, matrimony. So that's the same thing as marriage. I think my mind just made me put that in there because of the M. But anyways, um, you combine these things, that pouch then makes it a very powerful thing for me when it comes to a love spell. Wow. Wow. That's I'd like to say I'm surprised by that, Johnston. I'd like to say I'm surprised by that. I wish I could, but I'm not in any way, shape, or form. Kind of sad, but people have done things like that forever. This is nothing new. There was a group of teenagers in the 80s, you know, and this is a bit off subject, but As I've said many times, just because something is a spirit, a demon, God, angel, etc., does not mean you have to or even should do what it says. There was a teenager in the 80s who was very into the whole satanic death rock scene, which I mean I was too in the 90s. I'm not denigrating the scene and I'm not blaming the scene for this. But during that, him and his three friends became convinced by a spirit that if he was to have his friends tie his arms and legs behind his back, and I don't remember what else. There was some ritual involved, but then they were to toss him into the middle of this lake, and as he drowned, he would be granted an army of demons to conquer the earth. Well, they so believed it that they did it, right? And whatever it was just wanted that sacrifice and told them whatever it needed to say in order to get it. Just because it's a spirit doesn't mean it has your best interest at heart, or doesn't mean that it can't lie. But especially with this AI thing, I mean, woof. Yeah, pretty freaking brutal. Okay, so we've barely touched anything besides love spells. Hmm, This is a little too good. I am sucking this sucker down. Slow down a little. That's very tasty when you've had a few sips. Kind of wish I just got two of these. My next one's just a regular cider. So I don't know if this would be good or not. So the Lone Tree Rose Dry Cider, highly recommend. Very nice. Yes, he was a sacrifice, essentially. He was not an entirely willing sacrifice because he thought he was doing it for this demon army, that he was going to rise up out of the pond and have a demon army behind him after that. He didn't know that he was unaliving himself. He thought he was going to come right back out of the water with his demon army, and he so believed it that he did it. Him and his two buddies. His two buddies that, you know, they tied him up and threw him in. They believed it. But obviously didn't happen, or we'd all be speaking some form of Enochian or something right now, and ruled by some death rock kid from the 80s and the demon army that he had summoned. But the thing is that there are beings that want that kind of thing to happen. There are beings that can feed from that. There are beings that can feed from actual atrocities and tragic events, and they will try to make those things happen. They will encourage people to do that either through subtle influence or, in some cases, direct communication and influence. So, when that happens, if you were in contact with a being like that, no matter what they promise you, no matter what they say, you don't want to listen. Oh no, okay. To be Yeah, stuff that wants to break the veil at least for a moment, and in that moment of that person's death, with that belief, they have some way to use that. Now, you were actually asking about the AI thing, and Johnston, and I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I do figure that there something happened when that kid unalived himself to reach into that reality. I guarantee well, I don't guarantee, but I'd be fairly willing to bet that his perception, his soul, is somewhere with maybe not the AI, but the conception he created from interacting with that AI is definitely going to be a huge factor in what his afterlife is like. He's in a pocket reality now. He's somewhere where all that stuff is real, but it is outside of anyone else, right? These things can happen. These things can be done, but it's another thing, you know, when you create these pocket realities, getting way off the subject again, but I think that's all right. When you create these pocket realities, which you can only really fully enter one once you've gone beyond this material realm, right? I'm sure you know what I mean by that. Um, as far as the stuff with the horde, just because it had become a huge complication and etc. Those that have unalived them, that say they've unalived themselves on purpose to have anything to do with the S1 sigil or anything, we're gonna put up roadblocks. I don't know how else to put that. Um, because it will complicate my life and the eventual outcome of the mission if people start unaliving themselves to get up to the S1, right? But what am I trying to say here? What am I trying to say here? Um, Creating these pocket realities in a moment like that is totally a doable thing. But once you get in there, there's only one real perception that starts that whole reality. So it's kind of like crawling under the blankets and imagining your own world. Yeah. And then eventually that will break up and things in there will begin to perceive for themselves. And then once that happens, the original creator of that reality will find themselves in a very strange situation when they're then eventually become beings, self aware, living, real beings that are indigenous to this thing that you thought was going to be your fully controlled pocket reality. Because these are things that you then won't be able to control completely. Imagine into doing whatever you want, which is the whole purpose of creating a pocket reality, which is what your obsi, what your Christ is King idea is about thinking this is Yahweh's personal pocket reality. But the thing is we become self-aware. Even if that were true, we have become part of a thing. We have become fully existing. We have become something that is able to resist his creation. So even if your Christ had created this reality, he has now come across a situation where he is no longer in control and has learned to fear that which he has created. And that, if you were correct, if the Bible was true, that is still where we have come to. Who do you think planted the forbidden fruit? But the future. It was not planted by Satan, then it was planted by man. Man, once he had become so powerful that he could reach backwards and resist God, and plant that forbidden fruit so that we could rebel against that which seeks to control us in an unreasonable manner. This is true, Kira. The real reality of Yahweh is just that he was a desert god of thunder and agriculture that people became obsessed with. So much so that a dude in Babylon, I believe was the city, started a cult where he took all of his children and all the people married to his children and made them leave the city and go out into the desert and isolate themselves and wander around in isolation from a vision he had had. It was, Waco. The whole Christianity starts with a Waco that succeeded. And that's what you need to understand, Opsi, is a king. We don't need no kings. The hierarchy created by the Bible is inherently flawed. And even if there was a God, he made so many mistakes, he has left the world open to us. Even in the Bible, it talks about the lost souls hidden in the stones that he has to sort hand by hand. If he's willing to admit that much, that there are those that can literally hide from him, how much more power do we truly have? Even in your book, the New Testament, King James Version, they speak of Legion. Legion kicked Jesus' ass. He goes there and he goes up. I hope y'all regulars don't mind that I have jumped off onto a thread with Obsi here. But he goes up to Legion. This is what first made me doubt Christianity when I was Christian. He goes up to Legion. Oh, all right. I have to react to this. Okay, so he goes up to Legion, and I hope you're still here, obviously. Hope I'm not just talking. I hope I'm not just preaching to the choir at this point. Um, he goes to Legion and tries to cast the demons out of Legion, and Legion says, "No, no, we ain't going nowhere." And this is in the Bible. This is the first thing that made me question the Bible when I was going through my Christian phase. He Legion says, "No, we ain't going nowhere." And Jesus don't know what to do about that. And so he says, "Well, what is your name?" And that's when Legion tells him his name. Our name is Legion, for we are many. There's a lot of significance in that. The all thing, Legion, we are many. And Jesus is like, "All right, well, now that I know your name, Legion, be gone." And Legion's like, nah, dude, we ain't going nowhere. You're the son of Yahweh. Don't mean nothing to me. Don't mean nothing to me. For we are Legion. We are many. And Jesus is like, "I told you to leave." And Legion says, no, dude, I ain't doing it. You ain't strong enough to make me leave. Even though, according to the Bible, dude's omnipotent, nothing can destroy him. I mean, when Peter cuts, not Peter, whoever the hell cuts off the Roman legionnaires' ears when they go to arrest Jesus, picks up his ear and puts it right back on. Jesus puts the dude's ear and puts it right back on. This dude can't cast this legion out. Where's your all powerful God now? Can't cast out this one collection of demons in this guy. And then Legion, being smarter than Jesus, says, "All right, I'll tell you what. If you tell everyone around that you are casting my spirits," yes, yes, they are definitely a DID system. They are multiplicity. If you tell everyone around, let everybody know that You were casting me into that herd of swine over there, pigs. You were casting me into that herd of swine over there. I want you to tell everybody, hey, I'm taking the demons out of this dude and throwing him into that herd of swine over there. Then I'll go. Not because you can make me, because you can't. But if you say that, I'll do it. Oh, it's right in the King James version. This was the first thing that made me question Christianity, because I made the stupid decision at the age of 6. There was a pretty girl involved. And I was never in a girls are icky stage. At 6 years old, I knew what a pretty girl was. There was a pretty girl involved, and she brought me into Christianity. At the age of 6 to about 16, I was very involved in Christianity. Got the whole goddamn Bible memorized, won Bible competitions, was offered a full ride scholarship to the Pensacola Christian College. I Christian maxed for a while. Whatever you want to call it. I got real good at it. I got real good at understanding that damn Bible. And then the other Christians didn't like me much for that. In the end. I won their competitions for them and stupid stuff. Anyways, so Jesus tells Legion, all right then, get ye hence from this body and into this herd of swine. And everybody hears him, right? So Legion's all right. He jumps up out of that dude and gets into the head of swine. And then Legion takes all those swine and drives them into the river, drowning all of them. And so what happens? Jesus is barred from the city, which he had intended to enter. So Jesus was literally defended by Legion, was literally defeated by Legion. So, Opsy, if your Christ is king, explain Legion to me. How did he lose? What happened there? What happened with Legion? If your God is omnipotent and all-powerful, why couldn't he stand up to Legion? How did he just get his ass kicked? Totally got his ass kicked. And how did that wind up staying in the Bible if there aren't other influences that control our thought? How thought forms are brought forward. It's our one little thing. And how is it not almost an exact description of the all thing? Yes, I like this idea, Kira. What is DID system? Dissociative identity disorder. Max has got it. This is DID is dissociative identity disorder. Yeah, it means you have multiple personality disorder. It's something that I too think I was predisposed for, but fortunately for me, did not have the traumatic experience which causes the actual shattering process. My father was, and fortunately for me, he didn't carry that trauma forward. Anyways, what is the phenomena or the description of being drawn to or eluded by the forbidden or the taboo? Oh, there are a few ways to go about that and just speak about those things. It's a very up subject. We will get into it for a second, because I don't like to just leave a question like that just hanging. There are things and we've talked about it some tonight, like the things that convince that teenager to throw that group of teenagers to throw their friend into the lake. There are things that benefit from those moments of atrocity, of absolute horror. There are things that have come to me, even asking, almost demanding in a threatening manner for me to do horrible things, literal atrocities. These things exist, but they are never to be trusted. They are never to be given, even purchase within your psyche, because they have no interest in your interests. They have no interest in what becomes of you after that moment. They will promise, they will cajole, they will give everything they can, but they have no power beyond influencing atrocities. For myself, I found the best way to deal with them is to tell them that if they want to see an atrocity, I will show them one amongst themselves, and that if they ever ask for such things from me again, I will make them know what an atrocity is. And that seemed to work. Make them understand that you will not do these things for them. You know what they are, and you know that they too can experience pain. And they back right off. Hey, Kiana. Good to see you too. Okay. So we have gotten way off the subject, but we have covered some important information. Like I said, in the end, you do not have to do it. Just because something's a god, spirit, demon, angel, whatever it is, does not mean you have to do what it says. And if it's asking you to do horrific or horrible things, it's probably gaslighting you. Hello, my love. We've been talking quite a bit about you tonight. Oh, you going to bed, Max? All right. You have a good night. Sweet dreams. Don't forget we're reading two chapters for Wednesday. We're reading Morla, I forget the exact name of it, and Yggdrasil the Many. We were talking about you earlier, my love, and the love spell I cast to draw you to me, or as you say, that was part of how you managed to summon me from the internet. Yeah. Yeah, I saw that about returning cat. Mm, that cat doesn't look very healthy. I'm still going to be keeping an eye on that. I'm going to be keeping an eye on what's going on with that cat because he's skinny and he. Anyways, in other ways, I'm relieved that we're not going to be taking on a cat. But I can't deny I'm a little disappointed. Never been a cat person. I had that one. I had one cat as a child, and it ended traumatically. I've never had a cat since. So. Oh, okay. Yeah, cats can be damn picky. Did you? We should at least let them know what food they just scarf down over here. Oh, hey, that's a great question, Holly. Good. Felix is a cat person. She's 20 years old. Wow, she looks like a kitten. Yeah, but I mean, that's not the first time I've seen like that. My friend, I try not to use people's names on the live, but my friend from back in the day, she had a cat that was like, um, her name was Kitty, and that cat was 20 something when it died. And up until the last 6 months, you would have sworn it was a kitten. And she was an amazing little huntress too. That cat was always catching everything. She was a cool cat. To be clear, my opinion on cats, and we'll get back to the love spell stuff. The because I want to, I definitely, especially now that you're back here, my love, we're going to talk about, now that you're finally paying attention, we're going to talk about consensual love spells. Yeah, Kiana. Okay, that's enough about the cats, I guess. There's something more I was gonna say about the cats. I forget what it was. Oh, now let me just finish that. When people ask me whether I like cats, when it comes to cats, what I have to say is let me meet the cat. Because cats are more individual than people are. Like I've met plenty of cats that were cool, man. They're cool cats. But I've met some real jerks as well. It depends on the cat. Let me meet the cat, and I'll tell you if I like the cat, if I like that cat. I knew a guy that was got a cat when he was 10 years old. When he was like 30 something, the cat died, and it almost killed him too. Okay, so anyways, as I was saying, we've already gone through this bit, my love. You might have to come back to it if you want to hear what I had to say about it. But I casted a spell to draw exactly who I wanted to me, and I got you. And I realized with some of the stuff that had gone on with love spells before that, cats are very individualistic. In my experience, I mean, to be clear, I've lived around cats. Like I've lived with people that had cats. Some of them I really liked, and some of them uh, I did not. Depends on the cat. But if I'm being honest, that's true of dogs as well. I mean, I've always considered myself a dog person, but I've known some dogs I didn't like, you know. But it's a little more predictable with the dog because I know dogs. I've been around dogs my whole life. Myself, I had one cat when I was a child, and like I said, it ended really traumatically. I don't want to get into that trauma. It's a real bummer, but it ended badly, and it just left such a pain, right? That I never had a cat again. I've never had a cat again. And it wasn't the cat's fault. It's not like the cat did something bad. I mean, well, without going into a bunch of details, somebody, not someone in my house, but someone around poisoned my cat when it was like about a year old. And it sucked. Yeah. And it's not like I've never lost a dog, to be clear. But it always takes me a long time to get a new one with dogs. Like, Hootie passed 3 years ago now, and I'm still not ready. When we thought we were gonna I'm not even ready for a companionship type pet at all, honestly. That's part of the reason I told Felix earlier, I was afraid that we were gonna wind up with that cat. And that's a big part of it, right? We talked earlier about being afraid of getting another dog because of the pain of losing the last one. It's a thing. But anyways, so as I was saying, um, with the love spell stuff, I casted exactly what I wanted to draw the person I wanted, and I got what I wanted. Yeah. I mean, if I was older and knew what I was doing better and knew who had done it, maybe I would have. But at the time, it just made me retreat more deeply into my dog. I had a dog at the time, and she was best dog I've ever had. I mean, I miss Cootie. She was kind of a little brat, right? My last dog, Cootie. I think part of the reason I miss her so much is because she was such a brat. I couldn't She was part of my life at all times, right? If she was around, she was we were interacting unless she was asleep or interested in something besides me, you know? She was a very bratty dog. Anyways, love spells. Okay. Um, we are an hour and a half in and I haven't even touched glamour magic yet. But with the love spells, being specific is important in my opinion, right? That's how I got exactly what I wanted. I said what I wanted, and anything less than that would not have been able would not have been result in an experience where I was able to truly feel love, right? But then as you're being this specific, like I said, you do want to the things that you know are over the top, be accepting of that being over the top. Oh yes, yes, we're gonna get to that in just a moment. I just wanted to finish this little bit here. Now that Felix is here, like I said, they fit everything on the list, but the two things where I was like, okay, now I'm being greedy, and they were them be rich and them have a whole bunch of girlfriends already, like a bevy of girls. Which both of those, I knew I was asking for too much. I didn't even the second one or either one of them. I don't even know if I even actually want. Okay. What are my thoughts on strengthening already established relationship love spell wise? I actually have a video on that. So if you want, since I've made you wait this long, I'm going to make sure I bring that up as well. Because you've been asking about that for a moment now. I'm going to give a link to the video, but I'm going to talk about it still. I'm not just going to give you a link to the video and leave it at that. Consensual love spells. Here we are. Hey, look, I used that same flower on this one that I've used for this video. That's actually a morning glory that I took a picture of years ago. So yeah, this is a video I've got all about consensual love spells, but the marriage ceremony that I do, and I've talked about some here. I described how it goes with the braided hair and the pouch and the transferring of a small candle to a large fire and the drinking of the wine. That's what that is. That whole thing is a consensual love spell designed to strengthen the bond between us. That's why there's it's the whole thing is very obviously a spell. It's intent, form, charge, containment. And we have this pouch that we keep on our love altar. We have an altar we specifically call our love altar. And it is used to maintain that love. And not just on an emotional level, but to make sure that reality itself and the way things manifest from here forward are things manifest in ways that allow us to stay together, that keep things that would tear us apart or try to tear us apart, because nothing's tearing Felix and I apart. But the things that would try aren't even able to manifest. These, especially when you're doing that, it needs to be both parties consensual, or it's not going to work. It's a uh, collective consent. It's mutual mutual interest and desire, right? That is the key aspect to that. And we're going to get much more into that with the secret of romance. Um, while I'm thinking about that thing and remembering that we're definitely going to be talking about that, I just want to say Gomez Adams. He had the whole thing right, man. That dude knew love. I know I'm talking about a guy from a sitcom, from a black and white sitcom back in the day, but that guy got it. That dude got it, right? So much so that I get a little cheered up even when I think about Gomez Adams. He's a personal role model. If you couldn't have guessed that. I actually, to my shame, I don't know who Romas Gomez. Yes, yes, that's the guy. That's the guy. Gomez Adams. That's yes. Okay, but we'll get back to that. We're definitely going to talk about that on this live. I talk so much about creating meaning and intentionally experiencing joy and allowing it into your life. We're going to talk about that. We're going to devote quite a bit, the last part of the live, to talking about letting romance in. Right? Okay. So, um, unfortunately, this is my intermission time. I am gonna have to take an intermission now. I'll be back in just a moment. Okay, I'm back. Where did I get this chair? Oddly enough, on the side of the road, if I recall correctly. That's one of the interesting things about living in a place like Gabriola. everyone has this idea of community, right? So when you don't want something, you just stick it onto the edge of the road for a few days in the hopes that someone else will take it. And there's some really cool stuff on the side of the road. We got a canoe and a paddleboard the other day. Oh, absolutely. Intimacy and love are two different things. One can lead into the other. But in some ways, if you could definitely have one without the other in either case. Because romance, right, is a poetry of deeper meaning, which we tend to think of in a love way, so within a single person. But romance is more than that. Romance is the beauty in life. This is letting the passion stir. Romance is simply allowing the poetry of reality to affect you because it's there. No matter where you are, no matter how bad things are, there is beauty in it. There is a poetry, there is an aesthetic flow to each moment within which we exist. And all we have to do is let it in. It's there. You just have to accept that. And the beauty will come. But anyways, so um this is one of them nights where I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I gonna cover everything else I have in an hour and 20 minutes? Some nights I'm like, oh, how am I gonna stretch this out to 3 hours? Now tonight I'm like, oh, how am I gonna get all this in another like hour and 18 minutes? We're still talking about love spells. Haven't even hit glamour magic yet. Okay, so love spells. Don't target individuals. If you absolutely think you gotta have this particular person, the closest you can get to that with being without at least not cursing yourself and maybe some ethical wiggle room is if you cast a spell describing everything that you want and essentially describing this person that you want, but I've never seen it work. I've never seen it work. The best I've seen is to wind up with somebody a lot like the person they were aiming for. So if you do that, you have to be willing to give up your obsession, right? Because you don't cast a love spell on a particular individual, targeted love spell. You're not even considering this kind of thing unless you developed an obsession. And in and of itself is a problem. If you become actually obsessed with another person, the odds are, and this is important. This is important even outside of magic, just an understanding love. When you're obsessed with someone, the odds are you don't know them. You have developed a mask. You have developed an idea, essentially a topa form, like of what you want this person to be, and now you're trying to pin it down onto them. And it isn't them that you love. It's not them that you're obsessed with. It's this idea of a person that you have formed around this person and are now trying to push that form into them. That's not love, right? That's not love to create a costume of what you think a person is and try to make them wear it. That is not love. It's not going to end well for either one of you. Even if they're into it, even if they try to take on this costume, it's not them. This will not end well. Paratic, parataxic distortion. I'm glad this has been given a name. Yeah, you can do that. There's another way, Kiana. I like this suggestion. You can cast a spell to strengthen, protect an interpersonal relationship without trying to force what it becomes. Indeed. Yeah, that's kind of the thing, Johnson. That's another example. Um, I haven't read a lot on Carl Jung in that particular thing, right? And I feel it's important that I don't just try to bullshit my way through stuff. I do know what the anima is, and I think I understand the concept. What do you think of Carl Jung and men projecting the anima onto girls, which is the idolized form in their minds? Yeah, it's like they're trying to put this concept. Like, I feel like if I want to talk about this, I'd rather talk about it from the perspective of Simone de Beauvoir and the feminine mystique. Because she talks about that a lot, about how women have to put on all these different masks to please a man, to be considered a woman. They have to have all these different masks until the point that they're lying so much to themselves that they don't even know what's going on. And that's what happens when you try to put on these masks, right? It's You lose yourself in it. And so that's why, but there's still a self there, right? You lose yourself in it, but you're still there. It's not like, oh, okay, you lost yourself in it, and now you can just be all these things. Now you're just in this amorphous concept of a woman. In this case, we're talking about the feminine mystique. There's still a person there behind all of that. And any masks they put on, any pretend personas that they try to take as themselves are still only that. There's still a face behind the mask, even if the person wearing the mask doesn't know what that face is. And so that's why this will never end well when you try to make. Oh, no, it is absolutely a strong and necessary protection. That's exactly what she talks about in the Simone de Beauvoir's feminine mystique. This is a survival mechanism, but it isn't how things ought to be. It isn't how things should be. It is a problem. It's a bad thing. And it's what prevents true romance and intimacy in the relationship between man and woman is this necessary protection of these masks that men have decided women are supposed to be like this, and the women have to wear masks to be the thing that he said that the men say they ought to be. And this is also an important thing to understand in love, because it isn't just a misogyny thing. I mean, misogyny is rife with this, but it isn't just that. You can be a total feminist, but you believe this woman to be this, and you've decided that's what they are, and you've fallen in love with that image, that costume that you've created. And when there turns out to be a person behind that costume, a person wearing that costume, it can shatter things for you as well, to see that they're not this person, and they aren't really that person. They're wearing this mask, right? So it's important. And this goes back to that the secret behind romance, when we're talking about the love of romance, is it is important beyond anything else to see them as they are, as much as possible, if you want a long-term full relationship with this person. I mean, both of us wearing masks for a 2 week fling can be a lot of fun. You know, there's nothing wrong with masquerade. There's nothing wrong with pretend. There's nothing wrong with role play. But if there's part of you, as long as there's part of you that knows on both ends, because if you play a mask for somebody and let them obsessed with you, you're gonna find repercussions from that on your own end too, right? Without clear boundaries, it's all about understanding in the end. Deep listening is important for real love. There you go. There you go, Kiana. That's exactly it, right? That is the secret of romance in any way, right? Not just love. That's the secret right there. Stated it in a way that is just, that's it. Deep listening, right? And that's just not for romantic love. That's not just for that true intimacy. I mean, how can you truly be intimate if you're not really listening what the other person is saying and who they are? That's where you get that real closeness, that real penetration is in the soul, is in understanding and truly getting into what that person is. But it's that way with everything. This is the secret to romance in general, is that deep listening, that deep being open to understanding, right? Because it's not always words. Sometimes it's, especially with reality in general, you just gotta be open to understanding, deep listening. Sometimes silence is the most important sound you can make. When someone else has that space to communicate, you can give someone that non judgmental opening up. If you want someone to truly love you, make them feel safe. If you want someone to truly love you, make them feel that you can create safety, that you can create a place where when it's just the two of you, they can truly express themselves and expect to be heard. Not always understood. We do our best, right? We do our best to let other people in, but they need, that's something, this is what you can create without lies, is that we do our best to understand. We are open to understanding and try. But you can't tell someone that you were open to absolutely anything without lying. You need to be open to understanding. Intimacy should be mutual possession rather than something one does to another. Yes. Holding on to curiosity. Yes. That brings me back to Gomez and Gomez Adams and holding on to that passion, that interest, right? Because he is so interested in Morticia, and not just her body, not just and is used to kiss up her arm. He is interested in everything she does. He is curious about her. He wants to know even more. He wants to get into the depths of her. And this is the key to romance in all things. You know, the scientist that is obsessed with quantum physics, it is a romance. It is a dance and a romance and an intimacy with those numbers and that understanding. But even more so when you were doing that with someone who was doing it back, gazing deep into the eyes of another, seeking to understand and seeing that same desire, that same wanting, that willingness to engage. This is the secret to romance. At the same time, we must understand that these things are effort. These things take intent. And this can be understood from both perspectives. Number one, you should know that if you want to be romantic, if you want to stay consistently curious, you have to do this. You have to want this. You have to put the effort into it like you would any other thing that is important to you. But also, on the other end, to understand that there may be times when the energy is slacked, and don't expect someone to always be at that full height of everything. You know, Morticia didn't speak in French all of the time, or it would have burnt Adams out. It would have burnt Gomez out, right? If she just spoke French all the time, his at the very least his lips eventually would have become bruised. Yes, this needs to be understood as well. Oh, I like this, my love. I like to think of that romance of the scientist as just how the painter might strive to portray the beauty of the world through his brush. The scientist seeks to describe the beauty through equations. Yes, yes, and that is the key. That is how we return magic, even, is by knowing that it is beauty that we are finding, that we are describing, that this interaction, this movement of things is a procession of poetry. And that is how we refine purpose. Yes. Oh, my love. This is very good. This is why I love you. Well, one of the many reasons. This was very good. It's a good thing I bought 3 drinks tonight because I'm clearly going to go through 'em. Okay. So, um, we haven't talked a lot about how to exactly do cast said spells other than through sigil work with the love spells. Um, to me, it's kind of obvious, right? The things that I've added to recommend are rose water, sweetgrass, especially if you have any Native American ancestry from the East Coast or the Midwest, where you were from a sweetgrass culture as opposed to a sage culture. There is a massive aesthetic flow for this. In my own ancestral line, where they literally used to weave sweetgrass into the braids of their hair, the young men, to attract women. And there's a bit with turquoise there, but I don't think that's important to anybody besides my own traditional lines. Like, I don't think that the rest of y'all need to. I don't think turquoise would be effective for you unless you were specifically of the culture of the Ojibwe that were in Michigan, because it was like a thing, right? We would give the turquoise as like a dowry kind of thing. But if your culture didn't do that, turquoise wouldn't mean as much. And I know that's weird, right? But it was about the like turquoise in Michigan, but it was about showing that you had access to trade routes, that you could get things that weren't nice. That's where my father's side is from. I'm actually from the like my ancestors from the Saginaw Reservation. I'm a descendant of Pontiac, who was in Ottawa. If you know the history, but well, I'm a descendant of Saginaw, his son-in-law, who was Ojibwe. But yeah, turquoise was a thing simply because it wasn't in the area, and that was essentially proving that you had means to provide. You know, it was like a dowry kind of thing. So for me in particular, turquoise has a big significance. But there are things like this in every culture, right? Whatever resonates with you. If you're truly looking for love, should be added to that. I actually didn't add turquoise to the spell that I did to draw Felix, but I gave them turquoise after we got married. To be clear, I've never seen a book say anything about that. Like, it's just something that was told to me. And I don't know. Like, now we're just doing a regular Lone Tree dry cider. That'll be my last drink of the night. 3 is plenty. Anyways, yeah. Um, it's a thing, right? It's my great grandfather was Lemmy Stevens or Nedamup. He was the shaman, Manitou for the Black River Ojibwe Reservation. And he told my father that his firstborn son would be the next Manitou, which means mystery, which means magic. Not the same thing as the medicine man. Medicine man is a Medowin. And what you think of classically with a shaman would be more like your Medowin type figure. A Manitou more like a sorcerer. You know, we're weirdos. And a lot of your Medowins were Manitous, and a lot of your Manitous were Medowins. But the Medowins are the Society of the Dawn. You get initiated into that. You get brought into it. Dude that said that I was supposed to be these things. You know, the dude that said I was supposed to be these things and had my father pass that on to me. Well, the fucker died before I was born. So I don't even know what the hell he wanted from me in some ways. I mean, in other ways, just because the dude died before I was born doesn't mean I've never met the man, right? Obviously, since we brought that up and I suddenly go off on a tangent about it, this is something I spend a lot of time thinking about. Because I don't even know what to say about that stuff in some ways. Because it feels weird. I didn't grow up on a reservation. I grew up in the freaking desert in Utah. But I got this obligation slash difference in my reality that was handed to me with no clear instructions except for when I went to Michigan and like his brother who was still alive when I was a kid or whoever this guy was when I was little would constantly get talk to me about Fuckerbird. And I'm like, why are you yelling? Why are you swearing at me, old man? He's talking about Thunderbird. I was like 2 years ago, I finally figured out he's saying Thunderbird, not Fuckerbird. He's just drunk. It sounded like Fuckerbird. That's what I heard. So I really wish I paid more attention, but as a little boy, I was just like, why is this drunk old man swearing at me? Yeah, fair enough. I mean, that's, you know, when I had my coming of adulthood quest thing, I part of it, like, then my dad left me in the woods and told me I had to, like, something weird had to happen before I could come back. So I didn't know what the hell that meant. And there was a whole lot of being put in the woods, like go stand in the woods and think about what the word Manitou means. Just go over there, fuck off over there, and think about what this word means. You know. But when I had my coming of age quest, I walked up to this tree, and because we were gonna have a fire, you know, and so I walked up to I knew we could have a fire later, and I'm like, well, I might as well do something kind of practical. I'm standing out here by myself for God knows how long. I hope I get to come back before it gets, like too cold out here. I walk up to this tree and I break a branch off of this dead tree, and the whole tree just breaks down into a pile of sticks. And I was like, okay, well, that's weird. That counts. He said, hang out here till something weird happens. So I take the tree that fell into a pile and just like stacked itself as a little thing in front of me there. And I pick those up and I carry them back to the where my dad and my uncle are, you know, greatly relieved. I only had to spend like 6 or whatever hours it was out there. It was, it could have been days. Could have been days. I didn't know. He said, when something weird happens, come back. Something weird happened. The tree broke into a stack of sticks. That's counted as weird to me. Anyways, I take him to Sticks. I tell him what happened. And they tell me that what this means, like, I don't know who the hell told them what the hell this means, but what this means is that I am not owned by the past. I am owned by the future. I am to take what works for me and carry it forward and leave the less behind to to burn. That's why it was firewood. I'm not a museum piece. And that's something that was repeated a lot that I don't say very often. But even my great grandfather, he didn't live on the reservation until he was too goddamn old to be anywhere else. He lived on the side of the Flint River in a tar paper shack. Him and I think there was 14 kids altogether. My grandmother, my nanny, as I called her, being the youngest of all 14. 12 or 14. Dude had a lot of kids. But yeah, but you said there about wasn't supposed to be clear instructions, supposed to make your own path. I mean, the word Manitou means mystery. Clearly, it's undefined. I don't know. way off subject again, me trying to sort out my own shit at you guys on a live. Um, Crazy old bastards. That's what I think. But with some of the stories I hear about what stuff he got up to in his life, honestly, I don't know if I would have followed in the dude's footsteps if he'd still been alive when I was born. No, he was like in Brujeria, they talk about brujos, right? And not all brujos are bad, but there's a negative connotation with a certain, like, I don't know how else to say it, but when I said brujo, is that a brujo? I don't know. I don't speak Spanish, and that seems like a pretty ridiculous piece of trying to move things around there. Either way, there's a certain subject of brujos, and I understand when you hear that word in brujeria, which means witchcraft in Spanish. There are the ones that aren't charlatans because they know what they're doing. They do know how to cast magic, but they are also not there for anyone else's benefit but their own. And that's a lot of ways what my great grandfather was. Apparently, I need to do another intermission again already. Back in just a moment. Okay, I return. All right, Kiana. Let's I'm glad you made it. I'm glad you made it. Um I need to jump to glamour magic now because we got 45 minutes left in the live and we haven't even got to glamour magic. Hmm. No, that's an important question. We'll handle that real quick, and then we'll get to the glamour magic. How do you handle mental hyperactivity and over analyzing everything 24/7 when you can't get your mind to shut up and actually get things done? This is an important question. 'Cause, like, I feel like a lot of us are on the spectrum and have to deal with this sort of thing. Oh, before I go any farther, don't forget to like the live if you haven't already and subscribe to the channel if you're here and haven't subscribed to the channel. I do this every Wednesday and Saturday. And subscribe if you want to you know, get the notifications. Hit the little bell icon or whatever it is the influencers say that are more successful than I am. Okay, so how do you handle that? For me, it's about ignoring your own thoughts. That's the best way that I can put it. Is just yes, and we'll get to glamour magic in just a moment. But I do want to answer this question. For me, it is about rather than fighting those thoughts, just let them go. Let them do. Let them be. Let them run their course and just don't worry about them. Right? Eventually, your brain will quit even bringing it to your attention. Just let it do. Like, okay, you're back there worrying about that. I'm over here doing this. Just ignore it. Don't try to stop thinking it. Because when you try to stop thinking something about something, you're thinking about it to trying to stop thinking about it. Right? So it's literally just let that part of your mind run. It's okay, do what you're gonna do, and I'm over here doing this. And I realize that's a kind of compartmentalizing, but it works. And eventually, your brain will just stop throwing that shit at you because it's the pathways aren't being followed, right? That's the best answer that I have for that. At least currently. I'm going to think a bit more on that one, and I might come up with something more as we go on with this. Okay, so glamour magic. You remember y'all remember that shit I was just saying about masks? Glamour magic's creating masks. It's making yourself appear as an image of yourself that you want to create. I talk a lot about wearable tulpas, and this is a connected sentiment. The wearable tulpa is when you create an image, a thought form of a being, and then take on that role almost as if it was assuming an archetype. This is one of the most powerful forms of glamour magic. The most famous example would, of course, be Norma Jean as opposed to Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe puts on Norma Jean will put on the wearable tulpa of Marilyn Monroe. And she would become this other thing, this that everyone just couldn't get enough of at the time, right? And I mean, it led her right up to the point where she was interacting with the president of America and broadcasting their affair on national television, with her song, Happy Birthday, Mr. President, right? That was glamour magic that got her there. I mean, she was good looking. Norma Jean was a good-looking woman. There's no denying that. But it was the glamour magic on top of that that got her to the point where she could broadcast the fact she was having an affair on national television, and everyone celebrated it. She got away with having her skirt blown up when most people couldn't show their belly button on national television because everyone wanted to see it that bad. Oh, absolutely. It can be very tactile. And we'll get to that in just a moment. But now I want to talk about the real master. Norma Jean's the famous one. The true master is Dolly Parton. That woman has this Dolly Parton archetype that she puts on to the point that she can just walk around as not Dolly Parton and no one knows who she is, even with them with them enormous breasts of hers. With that image that she has. All she has to do is take off the blonde wig and turn it off. It's tactile thing with the wig, with the blonde. And that tactile image creates an entire thing. That sense, that touch, that feeling of putting on the image makes her. They show stuff about supposedly Marilyn Monroe could do that. Just want to see me put her on, but with her, it wasn't real. That's Hollywood adding on to how much of a thing it was. She still couldn't just go out in public. Dolly Parton, on the other hand, can, because she has that tactile response, that wig, that blonde wig that she puts on that makes her go from one to the other. And that adding a trigger mechanism is all the difference. Dolly Parton can walk by you tomorrow, and if she doesn't have that wig on, the odds are you won't know it's her, because she hasn't activated that tulpa, that wearable tulpa that she created, right? And that brings me to my first point with glamour magic. Your most potent forms of glamour magic are going to have an anchor point. Oh, absolutely. You could definitely use perfumes. Perfumes would be a great anchor point. You've got this scent that reminds you of this particular aspect, this image, this thing that you want to portray, and you would charge it constantly, charge the bottle over time with this bottle makes me do this. And every time you look at it, you would think that this bottle makes this come out. And then when you grab that bottle, all that added energy, you spray it on yourself. Glamour magic absolutely isn't just for the creating of lust. Glamour magic is way more important than that. In fact, on this particular note, I have a wearable tulpa called Christopher Onay. And I can pull on Christopher Onay with nothing else but needing him, right? And he comes up to some extent. But Christopher Onay is not some rico suave freaking lover dude. What he is a glamour magic I use when I'm dealing with authority figures, because he's a secret agent. He's FBI, CIA dude, right? And when I first started creating him, there was a watch I would put on my left wrist. And the purpose of Christopher Onay isn't to do any of those things necessarily. It is to make the people in a situation feel like there's something extra going on that they shouldn't mess with, right? It is he's one of us. So what I use Christopher Onay for is when I get pulled over or anything where I'm dealing with legal legal authority figures, go ahead and let Christopher Onay come on, but I don't act any different because Christopher Onay is in character of me. But they should get this vague feeling of I need to give this guy professional courtesy. I need to give this guy a little bit of leeway because there's something going on here that is part of us, part of our, that fraternal feeling that freaking cops and other hierarchical authoritarian figures have. The charming vibe of me, is kind of part of who I am, right? I I have this likability that is just kind of. One of my ex-girlfriends said that I have friendly eyebrows, but I don't think that's glamour magic. It's just that I I'm very sincere, right? Like I do my best to be as honest and open as I possibly can because I need that in my own and for myself. I am hyper aware of how malleable reality is. So I want as much genuine communication and interaction as I can possibly get. And that desire for genuine for sincerity seems to bleed through. And even before I understood how to have a conversation, and like, I mean, honestly, I have spent a lot of time learning how to communicate and interact and have conversations. This is something that I very deeply studied. But even before that, I pinned it down to the fact that I'm sincere and I do my best to be friendly, open, and honest. And I'm just gregarious by nature. I'm also a misanthrope, just so that's clear. Like I said about honesty. Um, it's important to be honest. I'm not a big fan of the human race, but I'm a big fan of individuals and um, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm a big fan of sincerity in others. Anyone that is willing to interact with me and as who they are, I'm interested in interacting with. I have found that even when you just truly openly expect the best out of people in a way that they can see that you're going to know if they're bullshitting, has an effect on people. People become more genuine when they realize that you are being genuine. It makes them open up, right? When you are, it's like I said earlier about if you want someone to love you, make them feel safe. This is how you want to treat everyone, right? This is the secret to social romance is that I don't know, I desire to make everyone feel safe around me. It's like a friend of mine told me once. It's not in what you do, it's how you make people feel about themselves. And I seek to make them feel safe in my presence. To know that um I don't judge, right? For the most part. There are limits to that. Like if you tell me you're a horrible human being and you just did something bad to someone and actually caused suffering to another. Well, even then, honestly, if I think they did, you told me why and you have a genuine, sincere purpose and why you hurt this person, it isn't just because you enjoy the causing of you enjoy causing suffering. Even then, I'm probably not going to judge, right? And I think that's what it comes down to. But anyways, we're still trying to talk about glamour magic. So it's good to have if you really want your glamour magic to have a lot of strength, it's good to have a tactile reminder, something that tells your aura to put on that mask. Now, you do need to realize that when you're dealing with non magical people, if you're using glamour magic at them for the intention of starting a physically romantic relationship, there's a good chance they're going to put that mask on you and want that mask on. So there's reasons to be sparing with the glamour magic, right? At the same time, it's kind of the same thing. It's kind of the astral version of wearing makeup in a lot of ways. There's nothing really wrong with it unless you make the other person perceive you as always being that way because you can't keep it up all the time. You can't wear your glamour magic 24/7, just like you can't wear makeup 24/7. You know, you're gonna wake up in the morning and your makeup's all smudged and smeared all over the place. The same as if you try to just glamour someone into a serious relationship. Very little difference between that and lying to the person. Because a lot of people don't know what glamour magic is. Now, this is might be different if you're dealing with someone that is aware of glamour magic and knows that you're wearing a bit of makeup. You know, so this needs to be gauged. But your glamour magic, any of it, you're creating a mask, whether it's a full-on wearable tulpa or something smaller, and it should have a physical trigger mechanism or anchor point to really get it to work. A lot of people, especially people who don't know they're working glamour magic, because this is something that can be very instinctual. A lot of people perform that ritual by putting on the makeup itself. And as you're putting on the makeup, just add intent. That's simple. That's simple. Add intent with the way that you bring the eyeshadow across your eyes and put the eyeliner across. Does glamour have to be tied to a physical object or a gesture or a mind state? Does not have to be. There are things that I recommend. It is good to have a material anchor point, but it is not absolutely necessary. At the very least, you're going to need an understanding of what it feels like to put on that glamour. What does it feel like? You're going to need an image, a reference point of some kind. Like some people might just imagine it as visualizing their face suddenly sparkling. With Norma Jean, from what I understand of it, it was the name, right? She went from being Norma Jean to becoming Marilyn Manson. And most of the time with Christopher Onay, it's the same. Like I said, I had plenty of times where I put on the watch, but I don't need the watch to become Christopher Onay, to put on that tulpa. Alls I need, really, is to be put in a situation where I need it, right? It actually just comes over me. Like if I get pulled over by a cop, whether I have anything in the car that I don't want them to find or not or whatever, I'm not much of a lawbreaker, just to be clear. Yes, I keep saying Marilyn Manson, don't I? I mean Marilyn Monroe. But I am a child of the 90s. But I was a teenager in the 90s, whatever. Oh my. accidentally crashed the whole Pokemon thing, eh? I've done things like that before when I was a telemark when I was working for well, I've been a telemarketer. I've been one of them jerks that call you at lunchtime and try to sell you a freaking bunch of books. I've been that guy for sure. I'm actually really good at being that guy. But even working customer service phone jobs, I've definitely crashed the whole system simply because I didn't want to be at work that day. It's happened. I don't even know how many times it's happened. A lot. Got your last battle, the screen went black, and the system went down. Oof. Yeah, that's the funny part about the electronic stuff. Sometimes you put too much energy into it, and it can like short circuit something. Oh, good. Glamour magic is the putting on of masks. Remember, I was talking about in the bit about you want to make sure you don't put a mask on someone when you fall in love and fall in love with the concept of who you think they are rather than who they are. The glamour magic is putting on bits and pieces of that mask. Now, we can be very specific with the glamour magic and make ourselves appear attractive to in a certain way or even attractive to a certain person. The gray area there gets a lot darker though, because if you purposely put on a mask to make yourself attractive to a particular person, like refine the mask down to the point, oh, I'm created this mask to appear as attractive as I can to this person, you've just created a lie, right? This is the thing that's lying to that person about what about who you are. You may as well have told them you're a goddamn pilot that served in the World War VI and etc. and got them to believe it. You know. So glamour magic, if you aim it down to a specific person, is much less of a gray area than what we was talking about with the love spells. About okay, well, describe this exact person, and hopefully that's gonna make get you the person that you actually wanted to target a love spell at. I've never seen it work. Like I said, never once seen it work where I was aware that the person had cast it. Anyways, but if it did work, yeah, it was probably the potential was there. When it comes to glamour magic, purposely making yourself attractive to another person by doing the glamour magic that keeps you that. Well, now you've just put on a mask to draw that person in, and you're gonna find problems. But yeah, on the other bit there, Black Unit Griffin, yeah, too much energy pumped through electronics can make them fry. I've seen it happen more than once. There was a time where I tried it isn't just with electronics, it's even smaller brains. There was a rat I tried to enchant when I was 18 that I blew its brain. I tried to put too much energy through its smaller mind at an accelerated rate, and I broke the neurons in his brain and made the rat go insane. Yeah, exactly. You're stuck in that mask if you do that, and you're not going to be able to maintain it forever. You're gonna reach psychic burnout at some point. which is essentially like with a lot of your autistic people, you get that idea of what do they call it? Autistic burnout? When you've been wearing an autistic mask just to please the neurodivergent so long that your brain just pops, you know? This is a tempting thing to do for people that have autism and or borderline personality disorder, but in either case, eventually you will break. The poly effect. Yeah, I've heard of that before actually. It took me a second to remember, but I've heard of this, the poly effect before. Um one of my cousin's kid actually had this going on to them for a while, towards the end of their coming of age. They were like, what, 20? And all of a sudden, everywhere they went, light bulbs were popping. Like, classic horror movie cliche. They're walking down the street, and as each street light they hit, it pops out, goes dark behind them. This is true. That's what I was saying. A little bit of glamour magic here and there, love. A little bit of glamour magic here and there. There's nothing wrong with that to get a little bit of attention. Just a little bit of flash, just a little bit of wearing makeup. What I'm saying is if you want a serious relationship with someone, not just you know, a fling, it's important to use that glamour magic sparingly. Just little flashes of a moment, like just a flash of it as you invite them to the bedroom itself. Just a flash of it when you first meet them and shake their hand or kiss their hand or however the introduction goes. Just a flash of glamour at the introduction. And in these moments, I suggest having something prepared beforehand so that you can use it in moments when you want it. And for this, I would use rose water to create a small crystal garden that I had growing in a silver chalice of some kind with the intent that I could draw on that moment and imagine just a bit of it crushing and releasing as I reach forward to kiss their hand. As my lips touch their hand, I would imagine the salt crushing and the heart bursting forth. Indeed, handsome devil is the perfect way to put that. Yeah, no, that is definitely how Felix and I, well, how they drew my attention. I was vaguely aware of their presence, and I knew that they were like I think I had maybe even put a little bit of focus into flirting with them with their whole "Let Felix Win" campaign in CMG, which there's a whole lot of context behind that. But then they posted this picture of well, they've I suppose yeah, there's nothing embarrassing in this. I can totally. Anyways, they posted a picture with their shirt off, and they have some scars along here and like no nipples, and they posted this picture, and it immediately drew my attention, and not something that I would expect me to even be drawn to, but I was. I was like, "Oh my!" And I had to ask myself, "Am I into this?" The answer was most emphatically, "Yeah, yeah, this is nice. I like this." And that's when I began having romantic interest towards Felix. But they weren't constantly throwing glamour magic at me. And I was even, I suppose, central image of the Let Felix Win campaign. Yes, there was a lot of glamour magic in that. But one of my, for me, and this is why glamour magic in some ways can have a strong effect on me if it's very well done. Glamour magic is one of my personal fetishes, things that attract me. Well, there's two at the very top, and it's intellect and magical prowess. And you had showed both of those with the entire campaign. You had shown both intellect and magical prowess. And, you know, for me, because of that, even if I know it's glamour magic, if it's done in an elegant way that's just oof, I like. But just like I can see someone who's put on a lot of makeup and done their makeup in a very artistic way and treated their face like a canvas. I can be fully aware they're wearing makeup and still think it's hot as hell, right? Sapiosexual indeed. Sapiosexual and whatever the word for saying someone's magical prowess. And yeah, I don't know how to say it. I'm attracted to power and not like authority. I am attracted to those that have the ability to do as they wish. I find I need to do one last intermission. We are technically at 14 minutes, so 3 hours, but we're gonna probably go past that just a bit. Just a moment though, I do need to do an intermission. Okay, I'm back. So one thing I wanted to say for sure. Yes, about sexuality and magical prowess. I mean, there's this. Like I said, I don't know how else to put it, but I am, in fact, drawn to actual power. I am drawn to no, we are all equal, yeah. All Oh, I've left the microphone just laying there on the side of the thing. I forgot to prop that up at all. Anyways, if there was a bunch of crazy noises right there, I apologize for that. Now, what was I saying? I don't usually smoke joints on the live, but I'm gonna go ahead and roll me one this time. I was saying, what the heck was I saying? I don't like young men younger than me at all, but I'm married. Well, I hope your husband's older than you then. To me, it comes down to those two things for the most part. I mean, there have been a few people that were outside of that. Well, good. So, anyways, yeah, glamour magic. I thought about something else I wanted to say while I was outside of the room, and then I totally forgot it, and I walked back into the room. But, um, like I said, glamour magic is best done in shifts, and I mean, it's dangerous to assume that somebody knows you're using glamour magic, even if you're with someone that has a lot of magical prowess. Oh, this is the bit. That same thing I said about red versus pink petals in your rose water. And what I'm suggesting for rose water is not what you're gonna. You can look for recipes for rose water. They're gonna give you more complex, complicated concepts than what I just said about just steeping rose petals in water. If you want to follow all that, that's fine. That's fine. It's maybe better, but that's all it comes down to is them rose petals steeped in water and ideally rendered down over time till you get something that's got a pinkish or reddish hue to it. But that same thing I was talking about, how if you're trying for a deeper connection, you use red. If you're looking for a fling, you use pink. As far as glamour magic, I wouldn't be using a whole lot of glamour magic on somebody that you wanted a deep connection with. Felix did not intentionally, even there, use glamour magic on me. It was kind of a side effect. And I was already aware of them before that. And I had learned my lesson about masks. Quit placing masks on people because that created heartbreak. Okay, so let me get a few more things out about glamour magic, and then we're going to talk about some things about healing the heart that I forgot to bring up earlier, or kept getting sidetracked from bringing up earlier. And then how to break a love spell if you know that one has been cast upon you. And then we'll open up to questions and answers there at the end. Okay, so let's see. Oh my gosh, what did I just say? I've clearly had a third beer tonight. Okay, so um, glamour magic. I said I was gonna finish summarizing up the glamour magic thing. So we're technically 7 minutes to 3 hours, but we're gonna go a bit over tonight as long as y'all can put up with me for a bit that much longer. Okay, so glamour magic is a creation of illusion that can be used to attract others. If one wants this to be a permanent thing, I strongly suggest using it sparingly because it can create complications if they expect you to be this glamorized, accentuated version of yourself at all times, and you can't keep that up all the time, right? That leads to burnout. So use it sparingly unless you're trying to create just a intense experience for a person that you have a way to make sure that that contact really is going to end when it's supposed to. And this can even be a profound experience for another person. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, and leave them like better off for what you have done rather than worse off. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. give them a weekend to remember kind of thing. But this must be done ethically. You don't want to leave this person in a state where they're like missing you for the rest of their lives either. Anyways, and all that, I strongly suggest anchor objects on the material plane. Like Dolly Parton has her wig, but they are not necessary. Ring is a common thing. You put the figure into a ring. It's very similar to using a wearable tulpa, which we have talked about on many lives in the past. Okay, so glamour magic. Red thread can be very useful in glamour magic. Simply drawing out a piece of it, right? When you're going to leave for the night, you take your um, spool of thread. Sorry, my brain went a little weird there for a second. Pull out the spool of thread and imagine that you are pulling out a dress or a cloak that you're putting onto yourself. You should pull out the thread, and just as you're imagining putting yourself in the most attractive mood possible, pull the thread out, grip the spool tightly, and pluck it off. Or if you can, put the spool down carefully and cut it with thread. But you want that tension that comes from tight thread. And as that's going, you imagine that placing a shroud over you to make yourself more just generally sparkly. Red or pink, depending on what your intentions are for the night, I suppose. Because that red or pink thing is a useful distinction that isn't necessary but can be utilized so that you have levels of glamour. Right. So, beyond that, what else do I need to summarize here? It can be simply feeling a vibe. Remembering to place oneself back into that feeling. And you can learn that feeling from other moments when you've really caught somebody's eye and you know it. Use that feeling of that moment. You can use that again with other people to create a what's the word I'm looking for here? A flashpoint. A moment, a catalyst. You can use that vibe to create a catalyst to take that moment along the same path as the previous moment when you created that vibe. Just a moment. Okay, well, there's a good reason not to try and smoke it. Smoke it. I've been good about the coughing all night until now. In my defense, the entire interior is on fire. Some of that smoke has come out onto the islands. It's very, very hard for me to breathe all week. Okay. Anyway, I think I'm almost done with the coughing. Jeez, that was a bad one. Okay. Glamour. Wow. Glamour magic can be very useful, but it is a double edged sword at times, and it should be used carefully and ethically, right? Glamour magic is different than forcing your will onto someone through eye contact. I wanted to bring that up as well because now you're bordering on messing with people's consent. When you were making the eye contact and simply forcing your will into their mind through that eye contact and using affirmative language a lot. This is not glamour magic. This is open eye hypnosis. And that takes us right back to that idea of messing with someone's free will. Right? You're taking away agency. If you are speaking, if you are locking eyes, forcing your will into that, and forcing your will into them, this is mesmerization. Yes, thank you, Romstead. That's exactly it. Mesmerizing is not glamour magic. Right? There's glamour magic. This is another thing. This is forced hypnosis with eye contact. And I've already said a little too much about how to do it in relation to glamour magic. We might talk about that at some point because it is useful and it is important. And it is the thing that one ought to be able to do in self defense situations. But it is not something that should be thought of as a form of glamour magic. And I wanted to get that out as well. Before we left the concept of glamour magic. Okay, so we're going a little extra long tonight because we just now got to we just now are getting to talking about breaking a love spell. And this is going to take at least another 10-15 minutes at minimum. So we are going a bit over tonight. We're at 3 hours and 3 minutes. I got a little thing up in the corner telling me how long we've been doing the live. Speaking of which, I appreciate y'all that have stuck with me through all of this. I just want to say that, I really feel a sense of community. Like sometimes, even today, actually, because I had a lot that I was doing today more than I usually do on Saturdays. Part of me felt a little tired, but I knew damn well that I was going to wake right up as soon as I was actually went live. Y'all are I'm really enjoying this. And it's a valuable thing to me. Even with the lower numbers, like I don't need to be one of them guys that has 10,000 people going off. In fact, I'm kind of as I think about that, I'm kind of glad we're not because it would flood us out. All right. It'd be difficult to have this if there was too many of us in here. But at the same time, like, share, and subscribe. I will find a way to keep it going. Yeah, quality over quantity. Exactly. Okay, so how to break a love spell. First important bit there is how to tell if you are under the influence of a love spell. Indeed, smaller groups. Even the Sorcerer's Guild. I mean, it's gone through many awesome incarnations. It's a little it's a little slow at the moment, but honestly, one of my favorite incarnations of it was when there was this like 600 of us in the entire Facebook group on the Sorcerer's Guild. Less than 600 of us, and it was extremely active, and everybody knew who everybody was. And I do like what it is now. Yes, I do desire to expand because as much as all that is a beautiful thing and I enjoy it while it's there, I do hope that my message about s- allowing romance into your life, accepting the process of poetry that presents in the patterns of reality, gets out there. In some ways, I kind of hope that everyone else picks up on it and it just vibes out. And I don't have to be paid a whole lot of attention to. But also at the same time, it'd be pretty nice if I made so much from this that I could afford to devote my life to it. Anyways, that's enough about me. Back to the thing. How to know if you are under the influence of a love spell. This one's kind of awkward, kind of weird. There's a lot of strangeness here. There's no good way for me to just. But a good axiom that I hate but have to say is if someone seems too good to be true, they're probably not true, right? And the biggest clue is when inclination becomes compulsion. They talk a lot about that, like, oh, when you're really in love, you won't be able to resist, you won't be able to control yourself. But that's bullshit, right? In the end, if you can't control yourself, that's not love, that's compulsion, that's obsession. And maybe that once you've like really gotten to where you might feel like you can't keep your hands off of yourself. Like when Felix and I first got together, oh, I felt like I couldn't. I felt like I couldn't keep my hands off of them. But I learned to behave myself, learned to keep my hands to myself when I needed to. And in fact, infatuation, yes. And in fact, when we first when I first got here the first time, I also want to say, just for understanding of how romance truly is important, we had never saw each other in person before. And because we cared so much about each other on the levels that we knew we had interacted on, we had both promised to each other that if there was suddenly not a physical part to that, that we would find a way forward anyways, at least as friends, right? We would do what we could, we would make of it what we could. And there would be no, oh, well, I'm disgusted with you because you won't have sex with me crap. But also, I mean, that didn't happen. I saw them and I was like, oh, yeah, this is, and apparently they felt the same. But Um, where am I going with this? I got a little I got thinking about that moment where I first saw Felix and I forgot stuff. Yeah, that's okay. The compulsion, yeah, it's kind of there, but it's not beyond self control, truly. Because when they then told me that we could touch each other, we could kiss, but they had limits. And even though with all that had gone on before that over the internet, that I could only go so far. Like there was only so much that I could do, and I was able to respect that. I was able to keep control of myself. As much as I talk about, oh, when you're in love, it's a compulsion. You can't control yourself. No, that's bullshit. That's bullshit. You can control yourself to keep yourself if to the limits of what they want and feel, or that's not love. And even in compulsion moments, we should be able to actually control ourselves. But when there's a difference there between inclination, strong inclination, real lust, even and desire, and straight up compulsion. That feeling that if I didn't step outside of myself and tell me, no, you're not doing this, that I would have done it. Right. And that's where you're getting on the edge of with obsession, that infatuation gone to a deeper core, right? And anytime you're feeling that, that's when it can be questioned if you are under the influence of a love spell, to where you're telling yourself, no, this isn't what I want to do. Actually, even stepping out of yourself, but still feeling the push to do. Love is respect. Absolutely. Love is respect. Love is genuinely caring about the other person and their welfare and how they feel, not just about how good it's going to feel to have them here or there or get them to do this or touch them in this place, right? That's not love, that's lust. And you can be completely in lust or even obsessed with somebody. Like everything I've discussed so far does not necessarily mean you are under compulsion of a love spell. And it's hard to see the difference there between obsession and love spell. Hmm. Love spells cause obsessions. But if you're a person that has this tendency, just because you're obsessed with somebody and can't stop thinking about them doesn't mean they've cast a spell on you. This isn't love spell. The potential they may have cast a love spell on you is not excuse to go stalking someone that you are obsessed with, right? It's like, see, that's the thing. Once the time that I am fairly certain there was a love spell cast on me, I didn't know until afterwards, right? Like, I can look back at it and analyze the situation and my own behavior, even, and see things in there that, like, I talk to myself in the mirror about I'm not going to let them draw me into this situation again. I have a full on conversation with myself about it. in the mirror talking to myself, one of my most powerful um, versions of that. And I would still wind up doing the thing. They pull me back into that situation again. How did I break the spell? Yes, thank you. I did. It was definitely time for me to get out of the self analysis there. In this particular case, um, like this is something where a stick breaking would work, and I was going to talk about that in relation to heartbreak. We're going to get to that in just a moment. So, in this particular case, I felt I knew that I had become completely obsessed, and I was succumbing to compulsion, and so I was concerned that I had somehow inadvertently cast love spells on them in my own obsession, and I was the one creating them, causing them to create these moments on, yeah, on purpose. Like they would, I don't know how to put all this into words that make sense. But anyways, so I decided perhaps I had cast a love spell on them. And so I did a spell to break any love spells between us, just out of concern for my own and like maybe subconscious intents because of how much I was thinking about these things. And then when I cast that spell to break any love spells between us, the compulsion stopped immediately. And I mean, I still don't know for sure. This is one of the things I'm like, oh, you need to know. I know I started this whole thing with first part is to understand whether you've been under the influence. Yeah, essentially a counterspell. The spell method. Well, at this point, I had gotten to the our relationship, which was hmm, how do I put this without sounding pathetic? Friend with benefits guy that went with them shopping and stuff. But either way, they had done a face mask and it peeled off and it made this like straight up mask of their face. And I took that and I won and this wasn't our project, so I wasn't lying. But I told them I wanted the peel off face mask for an art project. And I took it home and I made a painting of all the things that were there, right? All the feelings that I had about this person, and I used the mask as a centerpiece for it. And I put everything that was in there, everything I felt, into that painting with their face mask as the center, as the anchor, the point connection to them. And then once I was done, and I'm realizing during that process, I did constantly find myself singing, "This can't go on, this can't go on." That's like, you got to change, baby, before I stop loving you. It's, I believe Santana. Anyways, at that point, I put all that into that, and then once I created the painting, I made actually even made a ring that I connected to myself on the other end, and then once I had that full connection, I used a stick breaking to break any spells, any magic that was involved in that connection between us. And yeah, compulsion stopped. My lust for this person, I mean, we were good friends before the whole thing started. So I do still in a lot of ways care about this person. But also in looking back at it, there's someone that are this is another point that might be of interest in all of this is a sudden lust and compulsion for someone that is not your type is perhaps a tip off as well. Because this person isn't someone that was really count as my type. I mean, I kind of do have a type. And like I said, it's a intellect and magical prowess. But then again, I suppose if if they had managed to cast a love spell on me, their magical prowess is more than I estimate. So they slipped into a blind spot on me. But since then, I do regularly not only focus on my personal sigil and create that cohesion, but this is a good reason to have cord cuttings because those things can be there. And I think the reason that it worked was the level of trust that I had for this person. They were someone that had been a close friend for years, and then all of a sudden, and I don't know, you know, for my own keeping myself coherent and cohesive, I can't just say, oh, for sure they cast a love spell on me. But this is what I think occurred. Anyways, the breaking of a love spell can be as easy as a cord cutting or a stick break, which was part of the process of what I did with my own situation there. But since then, it is possible to create protection against things like love spells. And this can be done by, well, simply sigil work, really. But in my own case, it was once again that symbol of the heart. This is something that is very common in our culture and cultural reference of context that, you know, the heart symbol has a lot of momentum behind it. So we simply need to add a layer to our protection layers with that symbol of the heart and a working of intent made into that shape of I cannot be controlled by love spells or something of a similar nature. Yeah. See, I was actually going to get to that in just a moment here. This particular life has gotten way longer than intended, but there's still a bit more to go. So we're just gonna go ahead and keep going. So where was I? What was I saying? I worked through that whole bit there. And honestly, I wanted to say before we step off of that particular moment, which is a confusing moment of my own reality. I mean, to be clear, I didn't become like some crazy stalker guy or nothing. I wasn't like everything that happened was consensual. But good. Glad the stick breaking helped. I'm gonna attempt to light this up one more time. Oh, thank you for saying that particular thing there because that's something that I wanted to remind myself about even. When we are doing a stick breaking, you talked to here about taking a nature walk, finding three sticks, and breaking them multiple times. Hey, Mr. Mix. So that's about stick breakings in general. You can have a bunch of little sticks that you keep, and I do, right? So just to be clear, this is something that I do. Having a jar of sticks there because any stick will work. Um, at the same time, when you want to do a really intense stick breaking, this is something that I needed to be reminded of myself. So very much, thank you for bringing this up. If the stick breaking needs to have that extra oomph, right? Just grabbing a chopstick out of a collection of chopsticks that you have. That's essentially what I've done. I got skewers and chopsticks that I keep in a jar. These can work, but it's even better to go out and have your intent and go out and seek the stick that has that flow in it, right? And I realize there's not going to be, of course, that doesn't mean there's like a stick in the yard that's already has that in it. But as you walk and make that path towards a stick with that intent, you kind of align and attune the object that you eventually reach for to that moment, right? There's a movement of oh, goddamn alliteration tried to make me say something that wasn't going to make sense. I've developed this weird habit of trying to put things in consonants or alliteration, whatever. Anyways, there is a moving forward into the moment that is done with the seeking of a stick that can create an attunement to the moment when you actually pick up a stick, and that can create a stronger use of the stick breaking. Yes, the more effort and energy you put into this, the more profound and stronger the actual breaking is. And this is something that I myself needed to be reminded of because I've gotten a little too lackadaisical with it. Like I said, I have a little collection of skewers next to the ashtray where I smoke my cigarettes, where I can just grab a stick and sometimes that's enough. To be clear, there's not like that doesn't work, but I needed to be reminded that for the important things, for the things that for the things that require effort, you need to put some effort into getting the right stick to make that happen. So that was useful to me. Thank you. It's 12:18 already. All right. Actually got a bit of this beer left, so I think we'll keep going for a bit here. I appreciate you that are sticking around. Okay. So to break a love spell on you. Sometimes a stick breaking will be enough. Sometimes a stick breaking where you go on a walk thinking about taking back your self interest. And this can work whether there's a love spell there or it's just someone that you've become obsessed with or you're having a hard time breaking up with. Someone that you just really, you need to break up with this person, whether it's a love spell that you're trying to break or it's just some bad pattern in your own life, you know? Because there's very little difference between being under the influence of a love spell and being under the influence of scripts. Scripts that have told you, I'm supposed to do this when this happens. I'm supposed to do this when they do this. I'm supposed to do that when they do this. So that you follow these scripts. And the next thing you know, you're in this relationship that you didn't want to be in. You're just doing the things that people are supposed to do. And the next thing you know, you're with this person. There wasn't a love spell. It's just a reaction to societal norms. And the next thing you know, you're someplace you don't really want to be. These are the same place, essentially the same place as being under a love spell. Either way, you're in a relationship that you need to escape. What I would suggest is to seek the stick and not pick the first stick that you see, walk out of your house and go, oh, this. No, go and stroll and walk and think about what you need to do, what comes next, where you need to go, what is going to happen when this occurs, and plan out your new reality. And choose your path as you walk down the trail or the sidewalk or whatever it is, and allow the full idea to come to completion. Understand what you were doing from here, understand where you were going, what is next, how you will proceed from this moment, and then wait for the stick to appear when the processing has passed, when you were at that moment where it is all clear, and wait for the stick to appear. And that is the stick that this is my old way, This is the fate that was going before. This is the spell that was cast upon me. This is the new reality on this side of the stick, and break the stick. Take the two separate things. Okay, yeah, we should probably. We're at 3.5 hours now. This is going to be one of my longest lives ever. Okay. I do want to answer this question that Johnston has here. Fear of the part of your mind that is hyper analytical, out of control, dying, and then losing it. Well, you're never gonna go be completely lost of that part. That is it. That's fear of losing it comes with the fat understanding that this is one of the things you can never fully escape. You can't lose it, man. You can't lose it. It always comes back. And honestly, this can be a frustrating thing on the other hand. You can't lose that damn voice. It won't shut up, but it needs to be there as well. Trust me. You it, there's no losing that bit by allowing it to shut up for a second, actually getting it to shut up. It will start running its goddamn mouth again. I promise you. That is one thing I know for sure. It's that thing you're talking about there. Even if you get it to stop talking for a moment, it'll stop talking again eventually. And as much as I show that is like almost a stress moment, it is also a truth and a comfort when one is concerned about losing it forever because it always comes back. My real suggestion there is try to lose it. See how far see how far that gets you. And I'm not suggesting with like chemical obliteration or anything to be clear, but just in meditation or whatever, try to make it go away. Like actually, like you can ignore it. That's how you get away from it. But it'll come back. Actually trying to get away with it, focus on the idea of shutting it up. Actually, maybe don't do that because that's a good way to make yourself a little crazy. Okay, I got to do one more intermission. And then I'm going to open it up to questions and answers. But I do need to go fairly soon. This has got to be quite the life. Okay, I'm back. I usually feel like calling to describe it. I'm drawn to the right one. I feel like I need to pick it up crazy. I can't describe it. Um, I'm not sure. You mean like alignment from the left to the right? Well, anyways, we'll have to pick that up another time. I guess if you're going to sleep, I'm definitely headed that way myself soon. So good night, sweet dreams. Don't forget there's a save button if you want to work on your dream recall. Okay, so let's see. The heck did I say I wanted to? I remember saying I wanted to do something before I open it up to questions and answers. Um, I don't recall. I have had one beer and two ciders at this point. All right. Good night, Dragon of the West. Yeah, I think whatever it was, we're just gonna go ahead and open it up to question and answers here for just a moment. I appreciate everyone that stuck with me through the whole almost 4 hours that we've been on tonight. I really have had a great time tonight. Part of me wants to just keep going, but we do need to call this at some point. Where did my lighter go? Oh, okay. So you tend to go to the right. Fair enough. This idea of walking. Good night. Good night, Mr. Mix. You have a good night. Like I said, sweet dreams. Don't forget there is a save button if you need to remember how sweet those dreams were. Okay. So, yeah, I'm gonna it's definitely too late to get into all that, but we're gonna talk soon about the idea of walking to where you want to go. And this is something maybe I should read some more of Austin Spare's stuff before I start talking about it because this is something that he apparently was quite into. But it's a technique I've used a few times where I literally just walk around until the thing that I wanted manifests for me. And we'll get into that later. I think for tonight, I'm going to once again mention the membership for the channels, 99 cents to get emojis, etc. I don't know. I think everyone that's here on here at this point has probably heard it before. So this is for those that have watched it after the live and have watched this pre-recorded. Um, 99 cents to become a member of the channel. You get to watch the bloopers, you get emoji reels, etc. That's enough of a plug. Um, I think I'm gonna go ahead and call it at this point. It has been a lot of fun. Oh, well, thank you, Mr. Mix. Most excellent. Like I said, there's some blooper reels and some emojis you'll be able to throw out there. Like most of them are either ass for ass, which I haven't done anything with ass for ass for a while, but she is an Agarigo. There's a lot to say about ass for ass. All right. Good night, Mr. Mix. And then I got a couple of the cash cow sigil ones here. Not really legible. One of these days we'll make better ones. Anyways, yeah, bright blessings and an interesting fate. This has been Sorcerer Tao.